Support for the Dice Tower comes from listeners like you and from the Op, also known as USAopoly. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 690.
The best family games of 2020.
Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Suzanne joins Tom and me to answer questions about why so many of the top 100 games on Board Game Geek seem to be out of print, the continued importance of Spiel in Essen, and why publishers can't produce their Kickstarter games any faster. Then we clock in for some quality family time with our top 10 family games of the year. I'm Eric Summerer, and joining me now, the Link Hogthrob and first mate Piggy to my Dr. Strangepork, Tom Vassell and Suzanne Sheldon.
What? I mean, I'm assuming this is pigs in space, right? And I'm not...
It's pigs
I knew he was gonna do
in
this.
space!
But what does that have to do with this episode title?
Not a lot. Well, I was thinking I was trying to find some families, and I was thinking Muppet Family Christmas, and then I immediately thought of trios that would work with that and jumped to Pigs in Space. So I know the Pigs in Space were never in the Muppet Family Christmas, but I don't know, it worked.
Did it though?
Sure.
I really think you might do too much Muppet stuff here. I may have to put my foot down and just ban the Muppets for a while. I like the Muppets, but this is
What?
Eric, I'll tell you even more. I did not really care for the show this year.
Oh, Muppets Now?
But I'll tell you why. It had nothing to do with the Muppets. It's because because of meetings and all sorts of things, am on Zoom and Skype a lot, that I really don't like it in entertainment. So any of these TV shows or movies or anything, and they're like, look, we're going to show you what it's like to be a part two. Like, I already get that.
Yeah.
I want to escape from that.
Yeah.
Show me a CGI crowd over, I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, it has its moments. I've enjoyed the few episodes I've been able to see of Muppets Now.
Well, we are a bit between, actually pretty much exactly halfway between Christmas and New Year's Eve. Welcome to the show. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Eric Summerer. Hello.
And we were just talking beforehand about Christmas and the gift giving. And I saw a GIF yesterday, or a GIF, whatever. I'm sorry, I'll say it. Who cares? Anyhow, I saw a thing where it showed these kids opening presents and dad's like standing behind them with the garbage can to throw the wrapping paper away. And I thought, how do they know? Because that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm hovering around like, all right, take it out of the packaging. All right, cut off this things. Now throw it all in the garbage. Let's clean this room up. Okay, so let me tell you something about Christmas here that's board game related.
Okay.
So my daughter Melody, who is getting married in 2 weeks,
Oh, boy.
gag gifted me. I'm assuming it was a gag gift. She bought me a new version of Monopoly.
Oh, congratulations.
And I was like, do you know who? Okay, fine, thanks. And so I stuck it aside, and I was cooking Christmas dinner, and they're like, hey, we want to play Monopoly. I was like, fine, go ahead, play Monopoly. So Melody and her fiance took my two main gaming partners nowadays, Ruby and Violet, who I've been teaching all sorts of games to. We've been just playing through game after game after game. And they had never played Monopoly before. So they're teaching Monopoly, and I want to be clear. I said nothing, made nothing. No, I just was cooking quietly and listening and laughing a bit. And it was very amusing to hear my younger kids say, well, when does the game end? And they were like, well, when you're bankrupt, you're out of the game. And they were like, so does that end the game? No, everyone has to go bankrupt. And Ruby was like, that's a really dumb rule. And like, so, wouldn't it make sense if the game went when the last property was bought? I was like, well, maybe that would be a good idea. I don't know. And they were just, after a while, they were yelling, this game is so lucky. I was like,
You've got smart kids.
well, except for maybe Melody. She's regressing, apparently. But then come to find out, this new version actually did end when the last property was bought for some whatever reason. And then Ruby won, and she was touting how good she was. My other daughter was yelling at it was actually luck. And I enjoyed it because I feel like they won't ask me to play Monopoly again. So that was the only board game I think that showed up at all. Vassals don't get board games at Christmas because that seems rude. Be like, here, kids, leftover work stuff.
I've seen lots of pictures of some wonderful gifts that folks have received. I got one, which I'm actually going to talk about in just a little bit here.
And I got to play the Kringle Caper, Eric, based on your recommendation when we recorded a few weeks ago. So thank you so much for that. I played it with my kids who are 8 and 12, and we had a really good time. That was a perfect thing for the event.
That's very cool. I need to bring it out with my kids because I played it solo originally, and I think my kids would do well with it. I have to get them at the table and say, here, play this, have fun.
I need to find mine because
it's small.
I know I saw it can't come in the mail, but that's in a pile of games. That one disappears really easily.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did play the Christmas. Is it the Christmas Story board game? It was so bad that I blocked it out of my head. It was just awful.
Oh,
just terrible.
Bad.
Well,
did you shoot your eye out?
No, and this is one of the running things in my family. Every year I want to watch A Christmas Story, and every year my wife declares that it's her least favorite Christmas movie, and she hates it with a passion because of the whole. I don't know if y'all remember the 24-hour TNT marathons.
Oh
yeah.
That's no longer a thing with streaming, but back in the day, and so I was like, let's watch it. And the kids seem to be on her side with this, which I find unfortunate. But well, Christmas has come and gone, but gaming is here, or at least some gaming, at least. So, Suzanne, what have you been playing lately?
I got to play the follow-up or sequel game to a favorite little card game of mine called Capital Lux, and it's cleverly titled Capital Lux 2.
Oh.
There you go. From Aporta Games, I loved this game. It is a drafting game in which you get these cards and they're in 4 different suits or colors or factions, depending. It takes place, in this futuristic world. And ultimately, you're playing cards to the bases or the capital in the middle of the table or to your own little home base in front of you, your own personal tableau. Ultimately, you will score points for the cards in your home base as long as you don't have more points than the capital. Because, of course, you don't want to beat the capital. You don't want to be stronger than the capital. The government has opinions about that, I always really, really love this game. And I was really excited to hear when they came out with the second edition that they put on Kickstarter. And I've gotten to play through it a number of times now. And really, the biggest difference with Capital Lux 2 is that they added a whole bunch of variable powers. So originally there are 4 different factions, and when you play a card to the capital, you get to take advantage of a special ability. Maybe it's draw another card or something like that. Well, now each faction has multiple special abilities that you select from to start the game off with. So you can mix or match those powers, or you can go with some recommended setups that they have. And we did one random game and that was a mess. I'll be honest. It didn't really, I think the powers that ended up being matched didn't work out really well. And then we just started playing with the recommended ones and those worked much better. But the variable powers are a nice addition, especially if you had been playing Capital Lux and you're like, oh, this is such a great game. I just wish there was a little more variety. Some powers were more interesting to play than others. A couple felt a little weaker or I didn't enjoy them as much. Like one new power I really, really enjoyed adds this whole separate little board that's like a racetrack and you can play a card and then move a little spaceship up there to get bonuses and things like that. I really like that one. There are double-sided cards called duelist cards that you can add in. There's rebel cards you can add in depending on the player power. There's a whole bunch of different tokens that come in and out depending on what power you're using. So overall, Capital Lux 2 mixes up the formula by adding variable player powers so that in between, your different games can feel and play out differently. I think overall, they did a really good job with it. There are some new powers in there that I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed. And what's interesting is that while I enjoyed a number of the new powers a lot, I still enjoy basic Capital Lux 2. The original game really stands up. And it's not oh, the expansion ruined the base game, or, oh, the base game is pure and is way better than all the fluff that you add to it. No, I think that Capital Lux 2 is a great example of an expansion that adds a variability that you can customize to what you enjoy or not. And that works for me. So Capital Lux 2, I'm really, really glad that they came out with it. I think that the variability is fun and it's a solid game throughout. Plus, it's gorgeous.
That's true for the gorgeous part. I've never played the first one, so I thought it was a sequel, but Z was telling me that it was very similar, actually.
It is very similar. Although, and depending on which power you use, it feels more similar. Some of the powers vary more strongly than others.
Well, maybe I'll get this one to the table eventually. I say probably lying, but you never know. There's just so many games. All right, What do you got, Eric?
Well, I got, like I said, one game in my stocking this year, and I was very excited to see it. This is Emma Larkins's Abandon All Artichokes. It's published by Gamewright. It comes in a cute little tin, although it's pretty much just a deck of cards. This is a deck deconstruction game. Everybody starts with a deck of 10 artichoke cards. Artichoke cards do nothing, and your object is to get rid of them. In fact, the victory condition is if you draw 5 cards at the end of your turn. And if you draw 5 cards and have no artichokes in them at the end of your turn, you win. So the object is getting rid of them and hopefully having enough other cards so that you have a whole hand of something other than artichokes. The other cards in the game are various other vegetables. There's leeks and beets and potatoes and all sorts of stuff. All of those have cool powers that are about swapping cards, gaining cards, trading with other players, stealing stuff from their deck, doing all sorts of interactive-y stuff, and also composting artichokes. On your turn, you are going to choose one of the cards in sort of a row. There's a central row. You grab one of those, and you can then play not only that card, but any other usable cards that you have in your hand. So as the game goes on, you get to do more and more stuff on your turn as you will have more and more action cards in your hand. And then once you've done all that you can, you discard everything and draw 5 new cards and possibly win the game if you've managed to get rid of all of your artichokes. My whole family really enjoyed this. And there was some trash talking, and there's an opportunity to try and go after the person who is the perceived winner. There are some cards that will let you trade and possibly give them artichokes while you get one of their powerful cards. Although it's not game-breakingly, take that. It's a much more gentle messing with your opponents. You can put stuff on their discard piles to cycle into their deck for next time. It has a lot of the same feel of deck building games, but the fact that there are no costs for the cards that you take at the beginning of a round. So anytime a powerful card comes up or one that you really want, you can take that on your turn. It doesn't matter how useful it is to you. It has no cost. You can take that one and use it. So a much more simplified deck builder and a big hit with the family. Abandon All Artichokes.
Okay, then I do like this game. I find it very interesting. My kids enjoyed it. They at first thought there was some luck in it, and there is some. You could, what's it like on the? I think I calculated out. I think the third pass through, you could just get lucky and draw that hand of not. You could have a lot of artichokes in your deck, but just get lucky and draw that perfect hand. Or you have your deck down to 3 artichokes, and you just draw one every single time, and you're like, come on.
They're just spread out perfectly, and you always get one. Yeah.
This is one of those games you're like, let me shuffle your deck. Yeah, but it's interesting, and it works really well. My kids really did enjoy this one. All right, I want to talk about a game that I did not know about at all till it showed up in the mail, and that is called Dinner in Paris, which has like a nice connotation to it, because Paris is known for this, right? This is like one of the things that people do.
Eat dinner?
Well, no. I was going to say, after they're done with a movie, at the end of a movie, after they're done robbing a bank or being Batman or whatever it is, they're going to end up in a cafe in Paris where you can see the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, yes.
No, it's true. Have you watched movies? This happens, or you'll meet that love of your life at that Paris cafe.
Sure.
I've actually eaten at one time now, and it is nice. I didn't meet anyone, though, but, that's probably good. Anyhow.
You weren't Batman, though.
Yes, I'm getting off track here. I'm just saying.
Yeah, a little.
Just a bit.
So Dinner in Paris is from a company called Funny Fox, and the designer is The Trolls, which is confusing. I looked it up, and they've not done anything else, so I'm not really sure what that means. But in this game, you are collecting resource cards, a la Ticket to Ride style, just different kinds of foods, to build restaurants. You can build different size restaurants. The restaurants are almost Lego-esque in how they're 3D plastic buildings, and they're different lengths, and you're putting them around this square. Once you have these restaurants built, those restaurants provide you with usually some increase in income. Everyone starts with a certain amount of money they have per turn, and you can, instead of building restaurants, you can build out your terrace, which are these little just these little squares that you're building all over the board, putting them in front of your restaurant, kind of expanding it, although you might build them in weird directions. Like if my restaurant's next to Eric, I might expand out and then cut over in front of Eric so he can't build his terrace very big.
Oh,
I wouldn't.
That's not very nice.
I wouldn't. But Suzanne would. All right.
Hey. Okay, it's true.
So
yeah, probably.
So what you're trying to do, you're building these terraces out because if you cover up different spots on the board, you might get some bonus cards. You might be trying to build different shapes or just have different size terraces for whatever reason. There's different victory points. Each game is going to be different. And so the whole thing is really nice. You have these 3D trays that these terraces come out of. They get more expensive, but they also increase your income and you get more points. So you can decide to build a whole bunch of terraces for really cheap restaurants, which are cheaper to do but get you fewer points, or concentrate on the bigger, more expensive ones. So I like it. It's probably a solid, 7 for me out of 10. There's a couple small problems I have with it. One, the card quality is not good. They round at the corners, but they round at the corners.
So they're circles?
Not quite, but they're really rounded, and then the card quality is really cheap. But my other problem, and this is more problematic, is so you're drawing these different resources that you need to build a restaurant. So let's say one kind of restaurant needs 2 bread and a cheese. Another restaurant needs a cheese, seafood, and bread, or whatever they might need. The different resource cards have these things on them, and you're drawing from face up or face down. But there are some resource cards that are either or ingredients, and there's even some that are one of 3 different ingredients. Those are clearly better than the single ones. Mm-hmm. It's, Ticket to Ride solved that problem by saying, hey, there's wild cards, but you know what? If you take it, that's the only one you get. And this game does not do that, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if it did do that somehow. I felt like because these restaurants, you're only going to build a few, maybe 3 or 4 of them over the course of the game. So these resources are a pretty big deal. And if I can get my restaurant out first because I got one, a couple wilds, and so I have the stuff I need, that's a big deal. So that's minor stuff, though. I mean, it's definitely a very strong family game, and I think a lot of people are going to like it for that reason. So that's Dinner in Paris.
Designed by The Trolls.
I'll play it after I'm done being Batman.
All
Well,
right.
I gotta take advantage of my time with you gents and talk about a roll and write game.
Of course.
I couldn't skip this opportunity to talk about a roll and write game, of course.
Well, I really wanted to hear about it, so go ahead.
Well, woohoo! Here we go. Dice Trip Switzerland. This is published by Helvetique, and I'm not sure about its availability in the U.S. in general, but I got a copy, and I wanted to tell you about it. So there you go. I know. I lost my train of thought, and I covered it up beautifully, don't you think?
I never noticed.
Like butter.
I zoned out as soon as you said roll and write.
Fair enough. I figured as much. In Dice Trip Switzerland, you're going to get a sheet, and it's got a map essentially of Switzerland, and then little circles connected by lines, and it basically forms a map-like structure with a network of paths that connect these circles. And then you're going to be rolling 4 dice that there's 4 different colors, and they match vaguely a couple of the circle colors on the map. On a turn, those dice are going to get rolled, and you are going to pick a pair of dice and use those to form a number. So basically, if you roll a 1 and a 6, you can fill in the 16 or you can fill in the 61. If you roll a 4 and a 4, you can fill in the 44. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're picking the pair of dice that you want to do. You're writing numbers freeform in any of the circles available, but ultimately you want to connect regions and connect paths, because there's a variety of ways that you're going to score at the end of the game. You're going to score for your longest ascending route through your map. Now, you can skip numbers, but the numbers always have to ascend. You're going to score points for your longest continuous path. So 11, 12, 13, 14, the numbers in sequence. Wherever that is, you'll score points for that. You're going to score points if you use a number that matches the color of the circle to the number of the die. So if I use the red die in my number and I fill in a red circle with it, I'll get points for that, etc., etc. There's a variety of ways that you're going to be scoring. If you end up late game not being able to fill in a circle, you're going to have to put an X through it. You're going to lose points for that. And there are a couple of optional special abilities that you can use once per game for a reroll and things like that, in case you need it, or to help with the dice mitigation, which you don't really need because there's 4 dice rolled every turn and you can pick your pairs as you go. Now, if you've played on tour, the idea of using this pair of dice that sets numbers, that connects routes where you're free-forming paths through a map, that's going to sound familiar. And it kind of has that feel, but Dice Trip is much, much faster of a game. And I will say overall, I prefer Dice Trip. The quickness of the game, the ease of teaching, the thoughtfulness of the map design all makes for a really compelling experience. It hits in that very nice weight that I think roll and write games succeed so well at, of being simple to teach and quick to play, but there is definite thought and planning. And I really like roll and write games that have pathing elements. I like pathing games in general, and Dice Trip has a lot of that in it. When you're looking at this network that connects the circles, you can see that some circles get connected by 5 different points, whereas some circles only get connected by 3 different points. And planning ahead and spreading the numbers around as you go, it becomes quite clever. And it makes you feel clever when you pull something off like a long continuous chain of numbers. And I always like games that help me feel good about myself, you know? So ultimately, I gotta say, Dice Trip Switzerland is really, really delightful. This one I'm definitely going to be laminating and throwing in my travel kit, because it's just one of those types of roll and write games you can throw down, teach, play with a crowd. It's a lot of fun, and I definitely recommend it. I'm really, really, really hoping that Helvetic finds a way to get this to North America, or they've talked about maybe coming up with more maps of different regions, which I think would be great too.
How about anybody? On Board Game Geek, there are 2 ratings.
Well, I'll rate it. I haven't rated yet. I can rate it. Then there will be 3.
That makes 3. Interesting enough, you mentioned on tour, and I was looking at this designer here, Hartmut Kamerell, and his most popular game is a game called Finito, which I don't believe I play, but I looked, and Finito is being re-implemented by a game called GPS, and GPS is being published by Board Game Tables, who does On Tour.
Wow.
It just was an odd little circle there.
Huh.
GPS was on, this was part of a triple game Kickstarter that they did on Kickstarter a little bit ago. It's supposed to be sent out next month, actually, so we'll see. But same designer, so I will have my eye on this, and I'm now wondering if I have this game at home, the one you just talked about. It's always possible.
In the stack.
Well, the thing is, we always get a box full of these small games, and they're harder to get in the queue because there isn't this one big pile.
Yeah.
While a big game just tends to stare out a shelf at you.
Right.
Well, this one has quite a stunning presentation. It's a bright red box with the white cross in the middle, and it's a beautiful product. So I like the sheet too. It's very clean and modern looking, and I like that aesthetic. But I know Roland Wright games seem so prolific and just everywhere right now, but I really do. Dice Trip hit a spot for me that I've really enjoyed. So we'll see, Tom. We'll see. Maybe you'll be rating number 4. Who knows?
Nah, maybe. Well, we go from a small box now to a very big box, Eric, I believe.
Yeah, this is a good-sized box. It's called Turing Tumble. This is a single player. They say you can play it as a team, but
it's not really
it's a puzzle game. Yeah, it's really a single-player game. This is a physical manifestation of what they say is computing. Think of a Plinko board, like the classic Price is Right game, a pegboard that is mounted on an angle on a little rack, and you can mount these little devices onto it, and there's a feeding device with 2 hoppers of marbles. So there's a blue hopper and a red hopper, and when there's levers at the bottom, when one of the levers gets pushed, it will trigger that color marble. So the blue lever will trigger blue marbles, red lever will trigger red marbles, and so you're going to send marbles down, which will then trigger more marbles. Now, the key is that you're given missions. There's this cool, comic book style mission book that tells you it's a lot like the Think Fun puzzles, Rush Hour, and those styles of things where you're given an initial setup and then you have to figure out how to complete the objective. So the objective might be you need to alternate the red and blue marbles. And you're given this setup, and then you're given a certain number of pieces. And there's ramps, and there's bits that are like binary on-off things, and there's sort of cross pieces and hoppers and all sorts of cool stuff that you have to put together to solve the problem. And the missions start out very simple. You can alternate the marbles pretty easily. But eventually you start clustering these bit things on-off to store information. You can start counting or subtracting using these components. So the thing I just did, I'm about halfway through the missions, but I had to set up something that was going to spit out 6 blue marbles and 3 red marbles and then stop, even though I had fed the machine with like 12 of each. So I had to figure out how to get these things to count down and spit out the marbles as I was done with them, and it was really, really cool. I purchased this for my 9-year-old, who has had no interest whatsoever in it. He would much rather play an actual video game than emulate a computer. So as soon as we turn off his screen time, he might take a look at this. But the 12-year-old has been interested, and I have found it fascinating. It is a little fiddly in the very physical sense. There's these levers and stuff in the back that when you push down the lever, it triggers something, and those can get in the way of some of the components moving around. The marbles are sort of difficult to pick up. I wish there was something that, like a cup that collected them.
Just get
and
a
then
magnet,
I could easily, Maybe that would work, or tweezers or something. They are very small marbles to have to pick up and feed back into their proper place when you reset for the next puzzle. And occasionally your logic will be sound, but a component will be just a little out of whack, and the marbles will fly out. And so even if you have the puzzle solved, you won't necessarily see the results the way you want every single time. There's certainly a physical component to this, like setting up dominoes or something. Even if you have it just right, one little thing out of whack is going to make it fail. But that's still kind of cool. And the presentation is solid. I'm looking forward to completing more of the puzzles in Turing Tumble.
And it's so very satisfying when it runs.
Oh, it is.
So
yeah, especially
very
the complex
satisfying.
ones when you're like, oh man, when it runs right and you get those marbles to count and everything, it's really cool.
Great. Good computer programming teaching tool for sure.
Oh, very, very educational.
Now, I remember 15 years ago or so when Descent came out, I was very excited to see a dungeon crawl, an adventure-style board game. That's not as exciting in the year 2020. There's enough of these games coming to mail. So I got one called Adventure Tactics Domianne's Tower. I'm not trying to pronounce it. I always laugh when someone emails me like, how do you not know how to pronounce that fantasy made-up word? I pronounce enough normal stuff incorrectly. I don't know why you would get on my case about a made-up name. But this is from Letterman Games, and probably the game most people know them for is a game called Groves. I don't know if you guys remember that. Very pretty game. I didn't think much of it. I thought it was, And they did Dino Dude Ranch, which was fine. It wasn't a great game. And this was this big, it's a big box, an adventure game where you pick a character class and go through and fight bad guys. And the artwork, though, looks stunning. Really good artwork. It has the same look as, She-Ra, the cartoon almost. I don't know if that's right, but it's that modern day style, which I really like. And so I thought, I'll take it home. This one looks like it might be light enough to play with my kids. And we have played this all week.
All right.
So I love this game, like really love it. And I'll tell you why. Because it is a board game. Playing with my kids is great and all, but I still want to enjoy the game myself. As when we started it, and I mentioned that it was a bit of a campaign game, they didn't subtly, they're kids. They reminded me of the many, many, many campaign games that we started and then have not finished. And I was like, I'm a board game reviewer, and, if I don't like the game, and they're bringing up stuff from 3 years ago, like, when are we going to ever finish that Mice and Mystics? Like, shut up, okay. Anyhow, this is a game in which you pick one of 5 starting classes. So you pick fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue, or mage. So the five basic classes. And you get a deck of cards. You get this board in which you keep track of all your stats and different things like that. And this deck of cards has it's kind of like, it feels like almost like a deck building game, but you just get this deck. You're not during the round, you're not adding anything to this deck, but it'll have like a move cards and attack cards and special things that are good for only your class. And so you then proceed to go through this campaign book, and you're essentially each round you're doing a boss battle, for lack of better words. It's just one big battle. There's usually a boss and some minions, and you fight them, and you have to do whatever it says. And after you beat them, every single time, so far at least, you level up. Every time you level up. And when you level up, if you're a fighter, I can say, I'm going to take fighter level 2. Or I could take mage level 1, and now I'm fighter level 1 and mage level 1. And you'll add cards to your deck. You'll get special abilities. Your hit points go up. But even better, there are 18 specialty classes, like Ninja and Beastmaster. So like Beastmaster might require 2 levels of rogue and 1 level of fighter. So then once you have both of those, you can take Beastmaster. So like, for example, I started with Mage, and then I transferred over to being a necromancer, so I can summon skeletons. It's all very cute. It's the least dark necromancer I've ever seen. But I can summon skeletons. But I'm actually considering taking a level of fighter because I'm tired of my very, very small hit point count. Each time I level up in mage or necromancer. You can only do one of the advanced classes, but the basic classes you can fiddle around. And it looks like you're going to do 10 levels in total. So we just leveled up to 5. That's where we're at right now. We'll be playing it tomorrow morning again. And there's something incredibly satisfying about leveling up that much.
Sure.
That's the one thing I've always hated about a lot of role-playing style games is you play and you play and you play and you grind, and it's like, eventually you'll get better. Like, I love Gloomhaven, but I'm like, when am I going to level up in Gloomhaven? And then when you level up, it's cool. But this one lets you level up, and for kids, that's a big deal.
Totally.
But forget kids, it's a big deal for me. It just gives you that satisfaction.
Well, let's face it, Tom.
Well, yeah, and also what I really like is at the very beginning, we were like in this village, and it has a backstory for each of the characters. So my daughter's playing an elf who was protecting a caravan, and that caravan got burned down, and so she's hunting down the orcs who did it. And I was a retired wizard living in the village, whatever, and so it tells you goblins are attacking. Do you want to go to the gates and protect the city, or do you want to go rescue the villagers over here? And we picked one of those, and that was one scenario. But had we picked the other one, it would have been a completely different scenario. And we don't even see the other scenario. So that means the replayability of this is really high, because I'm already thinking, I can't wait till this is done so I can start over again and pick a different class. So I'm telling you, it's fun. I've seen some complaints online where people said it's too easy. First of all, posh on that. Thanks for calling me stupid, because we've almost lost every time. But I feel like it's at the complexity level I want, and each time we get these cards, we're like, yeah, we're bigger, we're better. And then we walk in, enemies like 70 hit points. We're like, oh, no. But we are really, really liking it. It is very entertaining. That sometimes even if you lose a scenario, you'll level up. And then, something bad might happen to you and you might go a different path and things. I think the writing is decent. This is really quality. I'm just really in love with this game. So that's Adventure Tactics, Domianne's Tower. If you like Final Fantasy Tactics, the greatest video game of all times, you'll probably like this.
Cool.
All right. Let's keep moving. Hey, folks. Today's show is brought to you by The Op. Also it's known as USAopoly. And today we want to talk a little bit about their featured game, Hues and Cues. Actually, you can watch me play this online if you want with people. Hues and Cues is a game that my whole family really enjoyed playing. It's a big board that's just full of just a color swaths, all these different colors. And you are trying to connect colors to words. You're going to get a color on a card, and then I might say the word apple, or I might say the word, sunny. And everyone's going to try to pick that color or get close to that color on the board. There's hundreds of color squares. And when I say
480 colors to be exact.
What? That is a lot of colors. So green or red, probably red is for apple. But what if I had just eaten a green apple this morning? Either way, it's a lot of fun. And you're using 1 or 2 word cues and trying to get people to guess. But you can also get close to the answer and get points. And so it's a lot of fun, as everyone will sit there and argue over what color you should have actually said. And it holds a whole pile of people. Very much recommend it. Hues and Cues.
The perfect gift or a game for your holiday get-togethers. The Op has a game for any type of gamer in your life. So many great games and puzzles. Get Hues and Cues and many more at theop.games or at your favorite game retailer. Questions.
Alrighty, we got a question from Jack here. Jack says, I was wondering when a game is shown and it has a fully realized and made copy of the game. Not only that, but there are multiple copies of that in the wild for people to playtest. Why does it take a year or more to get that game into the hands of backers? I understand adding stretch goals takes time, but if the base game is finished or mostly finished, couldn't the company send out the base game in advance and then produce the stretch goals? Am I silly for liking this idea better than backing something and then waiting a year or more? Obviously not a world-ending problem, just wondering, and thanks for all the entertainment over the years.
Yeah, why are those games not to me now?
Well,
sorry,
gentlemen, if you don't mind, I might take a stab at this.
Go for it.
Patience, I wonder what, if we did a personality test on all the board gamers in the world, where patience, as a strength, would lie.
Well, it depends what type. I think abstract players have a lot of patience.
It would be an interesting question.
Yeah.
So, Jack, from my perspective, because I support restoration games behind the scenes, there are so many factors that go into this. And first of all, that fully realized made-up copy, that may not be a production copy. During the manufacturing process, they actually go through many stages of production. And speaking from personal experience, there are specialty shops out there that can produce individual components. I may be aware of a game that had token sheets produced that were custom done for an event that cost $200 just to produce the sample token sheets. Yeah. So when you looked at the game, it looked great on the table, but obviously that's not a final product and not tenable from a cost point of view. Or even some of these early copies are actually sample copies, and they're not produced through the standard methodologies in terms of mass printing and offset printing and stuff like that. So what you're seeing may not be what you think you're seeing, if that makes sense. The other thing I'll tell you is that the idea of doing stretch goals separately, we've seen some campaigns do that, right? Where they've offered the base game to ship earlier and then other components just ship later, but that always comes at a cost because there are cost efficiencies in terms of making sure everything goes into cartons at the same time and getting on the same shipment, whether it's via plane, which is hugely expensive, or what more typically by boat from the manufacturer. All those factors go into why some copies may be out in the wild for reviewers like Tom or for play testers, but not available for backers. It simply, quite frankly, financially doesn't make sense to do it that way.
And then there's also a couple things. I'm going to point the finger back at us sometimes.
Ooh.
And by that, I mean the Kickstarter is over and everyone should fill out their surveys when they're supposed to, right? But they don't. And so you're
crud. I just remembered I have to
make.
fill out a survey that's way late. Thanks,
Oh,
Tom.
no.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that does take some time. And then nowadays, they also want as many people to be able to do it as possible. So the pledge manager will remain open for a couple months afterwards. And changes and tests. And then, of course, one small thing can mess up everything. Yeah. So for us, for example, with the Dice Tower, our Kickstarter, we had so many different things coming from different places. And a good majority of them were to us on time. But that doesn't matter. We're waiting for one thing. So if you have a board game and the dice manufacturer takes a long time getting you the dice, that holds up the whole game. And, you know, and then when we got the stuff, then they're like, guess what? Your stuff was slotted to be shipped here, but because it didn't arrive in time, it didn't get shipped, and now you have to get in the schedule somewhere else. And also, Christmas time is here. Have fun. Yeah. And Christmas time is here. The Lunar New Year happens every year at the beginning of the year. There's so many factors, and I tell you what, there's definitely a lot of publishers out there who cheat people, for sure. I shouldn't say a lot. There are several. But the vast majority of them tear their hair out more than you might think. They're not sitting there on piles of millions of dollars. I was just talking to a company whose stuff makes millions of dollars, and he was saying, people think I'm a millionaire. and he's not. Because that money goes back into the game. And they tear their hair out because they want the game to go to people. Because it's stressful with everybody yelling at you that the game's not out there. Yeah. So the Kickstarter is just making the process more front forward. This has always been how long games take to make. You just didn't see it because they just showed up on the shelf. So now you're seeing the process. And in fact, I would wager that the Kickstarter one sometimes is accelerated. Because I definitely remember Fantasy Flight announcing games back in the day that took 3 or 4 years to show up. All right, Joe says he's been listening to the old podcast episodes again.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, I was listening to podcast 277, which is almost reverse of our numbers. That's a long time ago. And I was having a debate with Doug Garrett on the importance of Essen. Doug Garrett has a podcast that's Garrett's Games and Geekiness.
Indeed.
He may have the podcast with the most episodes.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, we were talking. He says, of course, hearing again several years later, your point seems to have been made. I was wondering if your feelings about this might have changed after all, you attend Essen yearly now, and other factors like Kickstarter are certainly more prominent. Being that I've never attended Essen, I don't know if it has changed as well over the years, so do you think your side of the debate has changed, or do you still feel this way?
And do you remember what you said back then?
Oh, so not really. And I thought I should go listen to the episode, and then I didn't. But no, I do remember the gist of it. So there was this time frame where Essen was the thing to go to the detriment of pretty much everything else. And my biggest argument back then, and I still hold to this argument now, is I don't think anybody who is, quote unquote, a normal gamer, you're not a publisher or designer or anything, you're just someone who likes gaming, I don't think you have to go to Essen. It's a neat thing to go and see and do, sure, but you don't have to go there. It's not the be-all, end-all of seeing fun things. If you live somewhere else in the world, there are cool conventions near you. They maybe aren't as big as Essen, but they're certainly cool and fun, and you may enjoy them just as much. As the importance of Essen for a while, all the big Euro games came out of Essen. That has since changed. It still is a good chunk of games that come out of Essen, although this year is obviously an anomaly.
Yeah.
But just as many games come out the rest of the year now. And Kickstarter has completely upended this thing. Kickstarter stuff comes out all year round. I am personally hoping that this year starts a trend where we don't need to see all the huge releases at Gen Con and Essen. They're spread a little bit more out throughout the year like this year they were. I enjoyed that this year. I didn't get 800 games in a week.
Yeah.
Okay. I never got that many in a week, but you know what I mean? So many games at Essen, it's like, now they've been kind of spread out. So I would probably, if I'm being completely honest, at episode 277, I was a little annoyed that I didn't get to go to Essen myself. I'm hoping I'm not a sour grapes type of guy, but that may have had something to do with it, right? And I was also a little annoyed at people who kind of poo-pooed on all the American conventions and, stuff and like, well, they're worthless and garbage. And I would argue that Gen Con is just as important to gaming as Essen is. However, I wouldn't mind seeing that knocked down a peg. The power of Gen Con and Essen, I don't know if that's necessarily good for the hobby. And it's interesting to hear all these publishers that I'm talking to telling me that they saved money by not going to those cons this year. Now, of course, some small publishers, that's their only time.
Right.
I was thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of little publishers that I only saw them at Essen. I don't even know if I have an email for some of these people.
Yeah.
And, like those, remember, there's those, the Japan brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People ran for their games. Well, how are those games being distributed now?
Well, if you're me, you're making very, very, very expensive semi-translated orders through like 8 different websites.
Well, there you go. There's your solution.
Yeah, easy peasy. No biggie.
But it's interesting, right? Because I think we could all agree that the year kind of revolved around Essen and Gen Con. They're huge, both of them. Essen is mostly all board games. Gen Con had RPGs and miniatures and, a lot of other things involved with it too. But this year, both those conventions had the rug swept out from underneath them. They both tried to do digital cons, and I don't think either one did a tremendously great job at that. That's not a criticism against them. It's like asking me to run a con like Gen Con. That's not what my forte is. And it's not wasn't their forte to do a digital con. So it was a tough thing to do. And who knows what will happen in 2021. I won't even, well, I guess I have to, in like 2 days, I have to come up with some predictions. Oh boy. But I really don't have any idea what will happen in 2021. But the board gaming world survived without both those cons. It did. And I don't think it needs them to continue. But I would still go to Essen if I could.
Right. Well, I think that's the important point. Like, it isn't necessary to go to Essen. It's really not necessary to go to any of these big conventions. But I would recommend that if you are very much into board games and you have the means to take a one-time trip to Europe to see the spectacle that is Spiel, it is worth it to do that. Because it is such an amazing vibe and so different from the U.S. conventions. It is an exciting experience. But again, it's not necessary.
I would only recommend that, Eric, if you were going to go see some sights in Europe, too.
Oh, yes. I'm saying part of a vacation, see Germany, see Europe, and make Spiel part of it. Don't just head on over and expect to find great deals on board games because it's cost effective. It's not cost effective to fly over there and get the latest releases. But it is an experience that's worth having at least once.
Well, Suze, I know you love Essen.
Yes.
It's probably your favorite con to go
Absolutely.
to. But we're also involved in a business sense too, right?
Yes.
I would still like to go, but I wouldn't be uber sad if I couldn't go. I'm talking if I was just an ordinary gamer, because I would sit there and I would calculate, here's how much it would cost to go, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
or I could just buy a bunch more games, actually.
Absolutely. Like we are in a luxury hobby overall. And certainly when you look at the costs for somebody not in Europe to go to Essen, if you just want the games, you can save a lot of money by not going. But without a
Yes.
doubt, personally, the experience of being at Essen, and I hate crowds. I hate them. I dislike the crowd at Gen Con a lot. But for some reason at Essen, it doesn't bother me nearly as much. And
Hmm.
the energy and the pretzels and the people, it's wonderful. It's just I missed it this year. I was so sad it didn't happen. I'm glad it didn't happen, but I was also sad. And I am thankful every year that I get to go, that I have the privilege of going, because it's a fabulous experience for somebody who loves board gamers, who loves board games, and wants to just kind of soak in that for a few days. But
Yeah.
if you just need the games, yeah, there are easier ways to
There
get
are
them
easier
for
ways.
sure.
Sam says, I was watching a recent look back video where Tom discusses his opinions of games he reviewed in the past and if his rating for them has moved or not. I began wondering how this impacts the seals of approvals or seals of excellence. Tom reviewed Time Stories in 2015 as a 10 out of 10, but that has since declined to a 7 per the look back video. Even mentioned that it might go down to a 6, which I believe would bring it out of the seal of approval category. I'm wondering how situations like these work out with publishers. If a Dice Tower reviewer at one point gave a game a seal of approval and later adjusted their opinion of the game that would lower the rating such that it does not qualify for the seal of approval, is the publisher obligated to stop using the seal of approval? Or does the seal of approval or excellence retain a form of grandfather legacy permission that they are permitted to use infinitely moving forward? If this were the case, Space Cowboys would technically be allowed to slap the Seal of Excellence sticker on every copy of Time Stories, regardless of the fact that Tom substantially altered his opinion of the game negatively. This could also apply for the inverse scenario, wherein a Dice Tower reviewer increases their rating of a game after some amount of time, therefore escalating the rating to deserve a seal of approval or excellence. Does the publisher then have new permissions to feature the appropriate seal on future print runs of the game? As a marketer myself, this is all very fascinating to me. But it's confusing, as I feel the fluidity of these reviews can tend to impact marketing options for publishers that wish to feature the seals of approval or excellence on their games.
Well, just before we recorded this, I've been actually working on this very thing. I've been working on the my look back, where I go back and look at reviews I did 5, 10 years ago and see what I think about those games. And I thought how little they change. Sometimes they change just a little, or they'll move a point. First of all, this is a very big anomaly for something. Time Stories was a big one. But most of the time, if ratings move, they move the needle very small. The easy answer, if it goes up, of course, they can use the new seal. Well, just to be clear, we never charge for these seals. Just, if we give it, they can use it.
Right.
I have a whole legalese thing that's written out to make sure, that's like blah, 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 but it's all legal. If it drops, I don't care enough to hunt it down and say, take off the seal, because it also might be someone else in the Dice Tower might still have that seal for it anyway.
Right.
We've gotten the same question too. What if, recently we've been doing reviews in the studio, 4-way reviews. And if one of us loves the game, it gets a seal of excellence. And someone said, well, how's that possible? And it's just because if all 4 of us hadn't reviewed it, if it had just been, let's say it was me, and I gave it the seal of excellence, no one would even notice. But because all 4 of us did it, then it's like, well, did the other 3 drag you down? Well, no. If we only picked games that everybody loved, almost no games would ever get it.
Well, anytime a review comes out for any media, like movies or books, and someone reviews it, it is a review from that point in time.
The context.
Very rarely does anybody adjust it later on. And so somebody throws, Gene Siskel's review up on their marketing poster that says, I loved it. That was that moment in time. And you don't change it later.
Yeah, I don't worry too much about this. We definitely made a decision a few years ago, and I'm really glad we did that. We made it much harder to get at least the excellence. You know, now I give out maybe 10 of those a year out of the 500 games I review or something. Just very few of those. And the approval is still not, if I think a game is, it's okay, that's not approval. But it's the ones that are 5 or 10 years ago, they weren't on that exact scale. So that can cause some problems too, but it's not that big of a deal. No one is lying anywhere and stuff. I get that it's an interesting thing to think about, but I think it would come across as gauche if I dropped my rating, emailed the company and said, I know you've been using the seal of approval, but after further thought, take it off.
Well, and I mean, the reality is chances are the print run is done, and they're not going to pull copies off the shelf.
Put a sticker over it.
Sometimes when I'm in an egotistical mood, I'll be at Barnes and Nobles or something, and I'll go around and try to count all the games that have a Dice Tower logo on them. And it's not that many for that exact reason, because even if publishers would gladly stick it on the game, they only had one print run.
Right.
So it's only if the game gets a second print run. Or sometimes if I get an early copy and I love it, some publishers will stick stickers on it.
Yep.
And I actually like that better, I think, because as a consumer, the sticker's on the shrink and it's not on the box. And then the box cover looks more beautiful.
Thomas writes in and says, I was looking at the top 100 list on Board Game Geek and checking them against Amazon, and a surprising number of them just aren't on Amazon or are way overpriced. What is the deal with this? Are game designers really making an awesome game and then only making a few thousand instead of making as many as they can sell? Please let me know what you think about this. Are there designers and publishers of games who are deliberately making fewer games than they know they can sell? Keep up the good work.
It's all a plot.
Any thoughts, Suze?
Wow, there's so much to go here, but I can guarantee you that designers and publishers are absolutely not deliberately making fewer games than they know they can sell. The reality is margins, if you put them into retail on board games, are very, very slim. And the smaller the publisher, although, quite frankly, most board game publishers couldn't survive a number, like just huge losses on stock that isn't selling. The reality is that calculating a print run size is some of the most difficult math a publisher or designer can do. And they're going to make as many as they think they can sell, but they aren't going to make many, many more, because all of that is money out of their pocket on a thin margin item that could just end up ruining any profitability for them. So to that specific element of your question, I can promise you they are not deliberately making fewer than they know they can sell. And, in terms of Amazon, I'll tell you, Amazon is a real challenge for the industry on a number of levels. First of all, if you're concerned about counterfeiting in the industry, which has become a growing problem over the last couple of years, don't ever buy on Amazon, because every counterfeit edition that I have heard of has been purchased on Amazon. If you go through a traditional local game store or online game store who buys through traditional distribution channels, those are extraordinarily likely to be legitimate copies. Amazon has a really odd reseller program in terms of who has shops up there and who doesn't and what they can list them for. A lot of effort goes into trying to manage how prices are listed and how games are listed, and Amazon they don't care. They don't care about a publisher that's selling 1,000 games, 5,000 games. Amazon doesn't care about a 5,000 unit game. I promise you they don't. So it's a super big challenge for publishers and for the ecosystem in terms of like local game stores who have to compete with that. On the other hand, a lot of people don't have local game stores, and Amazon is where they do buy their games from, because they don't have a retail outlet that offers the variety that they're looking for. So I don't know. I wish I had an easy answer for Amazon and the industry, but it's a work in progress, that's for sure.
All right, Jonas has the last question here where he says, do we have any games that we think back fondly with nostalgia, but when you stop and really think about the gameplay, you have to concede it wasn't really a good game? And he mentions he played the Richard Borg 1994 X-Men Under Siege board game, which Tom did not buy in college with his very little bit of money he had, hoping it was an amazing game. He said this game had cool miniatures and he loved the theme, but when he looks back at it, he sees it was clunky and too long. And the luck aspect and how well you rolled didn't appeal to me. Maybe his tastes have changed or matured, but what about you? Are there games that you used to enjoy but now recognize aren't very good? But he doesn't want us to count, obviously, childhood games, which, again, that X-Men Under Siege game might count in that category, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking about going back to this look-back stuff. I mean, I'm constantly going back going, 15 years ago I thought this was fine, but I now have played so many better games that I look back at and go, yeah, it's okay comparatively.
Yeah. There was a time that I thought Risk 2210 was the pinnacle of board game design. And while I still enjoy that game, there are issues with it. It can go a little long, and there are many games I enjoy a whole lot more than Risk 2210. But I remember that being like, this was the most amazing product I had ever seen at the time. And that's just, time moves on and your tastes evolve and change, and that's
Eric,
how it
I think
goes.
my headphones might have bugged out there briefly. You said that the game was too long, and this older game, you were mentioning Merchants of Venus?
My goodness.
Was that what we were talking about? A game that's not...
Awkward.
This attitude has really evolved over the years. I played Merchant with Tom, and he's like, yeah, all right, that was good. He won. He destroyed me. And I think that's why he's like, I never need to play that again. I won that
I
already.
am undefeated in Merchants of Venus.
And now this outright hostility is just, it wounds me. He enjoyed it the time he played it.
I am currently the embodiment of that Homer Simpson backing into the hedgerow gif. That's me right now.
For me, it's a lot of take-that games. I remember how much I liked all these take-that games when I first started playing them. They were very entertaining for me. And I understand why people like that. It's simple. You play a good card on someone else. On yourself, a bad card on someone else. Family Business was one I liked from Mayfair Games and stuff. And now I look at it and go, yeah, it's just not that great of a game. But I liked them. So, it's just my tastes have changed. That's all. Come out of the bushes and tell us what you've done, Suze.
I think that when I look back to the games that I've played over the many years, there was a period in my life where I was playing a ton of games. I was in college, and what are you going to do when you're in college? Go to class and study? Heck no, right? You're going to hang out in the dorms and play games until 3 a.m. every day. And oh my gosh, just some of the best times of my life were at 2 a.m. playing card games, eating junk pizza with my friends. But when I look back at the games that we were playing, things like The Great Dalmuti or Guillotine, are they bad games? Not necessarily. Are they games that I'm eager to pull out to the table today now with so many more games in my history and so many more options available today and not being 18 and full of energy? Yeah, they're probably not
pizza, apparently.
the games I'm going to pull out today. But I wouldn't think of them as bad games. But when we get quote-unquote nostalgic about games, I think there are a lot of factors that aren't just about mechanics that come into play that sometimes you just can't replicate 25 years later.
Alrighty, well, that's our questions. Let's get to the top 10 list.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is brought to you by The Op, also known as USAopoly, at theop.games.
Alrighty, just as a side note here, so we talked, last episode I wasn't there, but we talked about the top 10 games of the year, and you go online and find videos, and I've done more than my top 10. I like talking about games over the course of the year, but I found that a lot of games we talk about as our top 10s often don't include good, solid party games because we're gamers. So the games that are our favorites don't necessarily match these, although they could. So that being said, I like to talk about family games. I think it's a big thing to do. And family, Z actually has a new name for these. He's calling them welcoming games.
Oh, I like that.
And I don't think that's a bad term, actually. So
Yeah.
maybe,
So not just party games. You mentioned party games at the beginning. You were talking about family games.
well, yeah, what I'm saying is I'm sorry, I meant to say that I personally excluded party games. I didn't put that on y'all. I just did that for myself because it feels like a different category to me, sort of. Although the number one people I play party games with is my family, especially in the year 2020.
Right.
But I could have done a top 30 on this particular list, I think. There were so many games I cut out. I felt sad, but I'm glad to see some of them made your list, even if you did put that nudity game in there. So,
Well,
What?
yeah,
I'm looking forward to finding out what you're talking about. I had a little bit of trouble with this because most of my game playing this year has been with my family, and some of my favorites are
so therefore
because
easier.
my family enjoyed them. I did not want to just repeat the same list, so I did reshuffle the order of a few things and folded in some things that I didn't get to talk about last week. So while some things may be familiar, I certainly tried to fold in some new stuff too.
Number 10.
Number 10 is Space Battle Lunchtime. This is a new one from Renegade Games. This one has a little bit of a Ticket to Ride vibe as you're drafting ingredients. You're a contestant on an intergalactic cooking show, and you're trying to please these judges and serve dishes for which you need ingredients, and you're collecting the ingredient card. There's kind of a cool economy as you get rid of cards to draw more cards and cycle around and get the things that you need to serve these dishes, and then use the abilities of the judges. It works really well, and my kids enjoyed it, and it is silly enough that I think it would appeal to the kids with all the gross space dishes and weird stuff that you've got in the illustrations. Space Battle Lunchtime is a good family game, and my number 10.
my number 10 is higher up on somebody else's list, which I'm glad about because I'm feeling a little lazy anyway.
So you got that selection over easy.
My number 10.
Oh my gosh.
My number 10. I'm going to delete that from the final editing.
Thank
My
you.
number 10 is number 10 because I believe it's the heaviest game. So when I was making this list up, I was trying to think of games that I could hopefully hand to a family and they could play without me. That was kind of like my thought. This is the closest to not being in that category, but it works so well, and that's Calico. Calico is a game in which it has something to do with cats and quilts, but it's an abstract game, essentially, where you're just putting these tiles down and trying to put the same colors or the same patterns next to each other. Getting a bunch of them in different spots scores you points in many different ways. And it's very thinky, very satisfying, and very easy to get into. It's the closest it's almost a spiritual successor to Azul in a sense. I mean, they're not really the same game, but I think if you like one, you'll like the other. I think Calico will be one of the games that we'll still be talking about in several years. It may not be number one on everyone's books, right? But it's a solid game that I've seen very few people dislike. I've also seen it go over well with many different people who like abstract games. People who don't like abstract games still like just connecting these things in there, and some people like cats, so that's why they like it. So that's Calico, my number 10.
Number 9.
My number 9 is a trivia game called Half Truth. This is from Richard Garfield and Ken Jennings, the Jeopardy champion. We've played this on Dice Tower Tonight, the videos show with Crystal Dax and me, a few times. It is a trivia game where you'll be asked a question and you're presented with 6 answers. And 3 of them are correct, 3 of them are not. And you can simply pick one of the 6 and get a certain number of points, but you get more points if you guess 2 or 3 of the correct answers. But if any of them are wrong, you get no points. So it's sort of a risk-reward sort of thing. Neat trivia game, nice twist, and simple enough to understand for the whole family. Half Truth, number 9.
I like it.
My number 9, I played a lot this year, and that's My City. This didn't make my top 10 of 2020, but when I was thinking about it for a family, I think My City is great, especially because it has an escalating complexity. And quite frankly, if you don't want to play at that higher level of complexity, it's just a simple, flip a card, put the shape on your board. It's got polyominoes, it's puzzly, it's simple to teach, and it's something that you can play and kind of guide younger players who may want some help with strategy, things like that. I really did enjoy My City throughout the whole campaign, all 24 games of it. And I think it's worth a shot, even with reasonably young kids there. So My City is my number 9.
This one was very close to making my list. It was on my short list. I think this is one of the best. This may be the best legacy game for a family. My number 9, I just added to the list because I just got it played this past week, and that is Arch Ravels.
Arch Ravels. I'm actually kind of a little pleased that I beat Eric to the punch on this one. Well, I've been waiting for my copy. I ordered it, and it's not here yet. I got it for my wife.
I figured you would. It's about, what's it about, Eric?
It's about knitting and collecting
yarn.
yarn.
I just wanted to make sure because there's knitting and crocheting, and I don't know the difference between all of them. I know there's yarn and stuff. All right, anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, in this game, you're collecting yarn, and you then use that yarn to make different things like sweaters and hats, and then you turn those in to get points. So it's a very simple set collection game. You collect these, they turn them into these, you then turn those in to get other points. Very simple, few small rules, really nice components. I like it. There's a few small fiddly things. There's a few event cards in there that I would make it a little more random sometimes than I would like. But beyond that, I want to give it huge props for having a different theme, thankfully, a theme that might appeal to people who normally wouldn't play games. And I think that the theme itself isn't so strong that, like, again, I don't know anything about knitting, but I knew that I was turning colors into clothing and turning that clothing into points. That worked for me. So it was a pretty solid game. That's Arch Ravels is what you're saying it is, right? Like unraveling.
Like Arch Rivals, but it's
I got what it was based on. I'm just want to make sure I pronounce it right. All right.
Yes.
Number 8.
My number 8 was Suzanne's number 10. That is Gudetama, the tricky egg card game, which I
The
did
nude
mention
egg
last week.
game. This is why I will not play this game because there's an egg butt on the cover.
In which all the players scramble to
God.
try and beat.
Are you kidding, Eric? Stop it.
They try and all position for the final trick, which is where you earn your points. And jockeying for those positions is interesting, which is why it's my number 8. Gudetama, the tricky egg card game.
Yes, I very much enjoy this game. I like how simple it is. Ladder games, shedding games, they can come with different levels of complexity. Ultimately, Gudetama is really, really straightforward. And I find the art highly amusing. I'm not personally put off by egg butts, apparently. So I think the art is cute and the lazy egg is amusing to me. So put those together and it's a really enjoyable, lighter weight shedding game, I think. And that's why Gudetama was my number 10.
We have a crossover here for number 8, actually.
Oh, yes, it's my turn. You're waiting for me.
No. Well, we were both going together here because we picked the same game, actually. So I'll let you talk about it.
No, I'll let you talk about it. Perfect overlap. It was meant to be because anybody who knows Tom and I together, if it's one thing Tom and I have in common, it is a love for desserts. So our shared number 8 is perfection.
Not the game perfection, but actually the game Truffle Shuffle.
Yes.
This is the game you play after you've had a couple good doses of point salad. It's made by the same team, actually. It actually uses some Uno mechanisms in a way that I found to be really well done. Because they're not really quite the same thing. Like draw 2 or draw 3, you take a card and then you draw 3 later on, but they're for you, not someone else. And you want cards in this game. You're just drafting. It uses a very similar drafting mechanism to Seven Wonders Duel, where all the cards are laid on the table, some face up, some face down, and you're drafting them, trying to get different combinations of truffles and or special cards that you can use to do funky things. Really simple. Also, did I mention candy in the game? I mean, on the cards.
Absolutely. if this is something that AEG is going to be doing, like this line between Point Salad and Truffle Shuffle, and I think that this is in collaboration with, what's the name of the publisher? Flat Out Games, I think. If this is what this partnership is going to produce, these kind of lightweight, simple to understand card games that have really rewarding gameplay, I am here for it, because Point Salad, Truffle Shuffle, both great games. Really glad this one came out this year. And like Tom said, candy.
Yeah.
Number 7.
My number 7 is the cooperative game Endangered, about saving various animals and convincing lawmakers to come over to your side with whatever initiative that you are doing. The reason this works well for families is that the kids are going to be more focused on saving the animals. They're going to want to be trying to move the pandas around or put out the fires or the encroaching oil spill or whatever it is you're trying to fight in the game, and interested in the animals themselves. And then the parents can be more about trying to get the win conditions to happen and convince the lawmakers to do what needs to be done, which is a good way to split your focus in a game like Endangered. My number 7.
My number 7, I hope doesn't break the no party game rule.
No, that was my rule for me, not for y'all.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah, I already put half truth on, so
Okay.
you're good.
Phew. My number 7 is Herd Mentality. This is a really simple game in which a question is asked and everybody writes down their answer, and it's the herd mentality. So you want to get the same answer as everyone else. There are some light rules about when you are the odd person out and you get the pink cow of doom and penalty, but ultimately it's just a really light, simple game, and as long as you can write, then you can play. And quite frankly, if you aren't old enough to write, there are still ways to work around that. And maybe Herd Mentality is so high up on my list this year because it is perfect for playing over video chat. So whether your family is in your home or across the country or around the world, you can play Herd Mentality with them and have a wonderful time doing it. And that's why Herd Mentality is my number 7.
My number 7 is the Princess Bride adventure book game, which just because it has the word adventure book in it doesn't mean it's automatically a good game, Eric, but it's true.
No, I'm thinking about Princess Bride, and I really want to play this.
Princess Bride, of course, obviously one of the greatest movies of all time. This is a cooperative game where you control the various characters in various scenarios. You go through the pages of the book, accomplishing a goal of that page through a shared deck of cards. And you're working together, trying to keep the story from getting too boring, or the boy will stop listening. That's the whole aspect. It has all the big famous scenes from the movie in it. It's a little easy, and it's a little simple, and that makes it perfect for this list. It's good. Princess Bride adventure book game.
I have this on the shelf. I got it right before we moved, and so I haven't gotten it to the table with the kids yet, but it looks like a lot of fun.
Have you shown the movie to your kids yet?
Yes, but it's been a few years, so we need to sort of recharge the interest on that one.
I think I would do that before playing the game. It would help a lot, I think.
Probably a good idea.
Good point.
Number 6.
Number 6 is one of, this has been a common trend that we've seen simplified versions of popular games coming out, often for the mass market, and this is one of those, Tiny Epic Galaxies Blast Off. When I talked about this version of the game, which takes a lot of the mechanisms of the full-fledged Tiny Epic Galaxies and just sort of distills it a little bit, it's a little shorter, it's a little simpler. I personally was not as interested in it because I love the original so much. But as a family game and as an introduction to this system, Blast Off works so well. And this is made to be sort of a mass market introductory game. It's a great, fantastic dice rolling, dice allocation game where everyone's involved and can jump in on other people's turns. And so there's very little downtime in Tiny Epic Galaxies Blast Off. Highly recommended if you are new to the system and have a mixed group of players to try it out. Number 6, Tiny Epic Galaxies Blast Off.
Awesome.
Blast off.
Speaking of games that you're active every turn with not a lot of downtime, my number 6 is Ripple Rush. Of course, a roll and write game was likely
Flip
to
and
hit
write.
my list. But Ripple Rush was new this year and kind of came out of nowhere for me. And one of the things I really like about it is that everybody is involved on every turn and active because everybody gets to flip over their own card and write a number on their sheet. The rules are very, very simple. So as long as you understand how number sequence works, you can play it. Now, can you play it well? That's a different question. But as I was watching my kids play this, one thing I found really, really fun and fascinating was how they improved between games. They had to understand the basic mechanism first, and then when we scored, they realized, oh, okay, so things started to click, and the next time we played, they got better at it, and I love that. It's so easy. The entry is so quick and easy. You can get people hooked right away, and then as you play over time, I think that it can really nab people's interest, and that is why Ripple Rush is my number 6.
I haven't played this one with the kids. I should try that.
I recommend it.
My number 6 is another game that just came to the table lately. This one I was excited about just on basis of two things. The publisher, Kids Board Game Tables, or Kids Table Board Games, sorry, I always get that mixed up. And the theming of it, Fossilist, this is. A game about digging for dinosaur bones. So in this game, you are literally digging for dinosaur bones. You have a bunch of tiles on top of a board. You move these tiles around and reveal bones underneath. You pull them out a la Operation with a little tweezer type thing. And then you turn in sets of these to get different dinosaur cards. Kids Table Board Games is one of the best producers of board games in the market right now. Their games are just high quality, look great. This one is probably a little too random for gamers, I would think. But for families, I think it's great. The production value is high. I have the normal non-Kickstarter version, and I thought I had the Kickstarter version. You know, and because it's that good of quality. And so I really like everything that these folks are doing right now. So Wreck Raiders from last year is a great game. This is the one this year, Fossilist. Definitely check it out.
Cool.
I should spell that. Fossillis.
I thought it was a typo in the list, so good job.
Number 5.
My number 5 is new to my list, but somebody else has it on theirs, so I guess you could say they beat me to it.
Tom, can you make him stop?
No.
It's
All right, I'm moving right along. My number 5, Scooby-Doo Betrayal at Mystery Mansion. Jinkies!
Zoinks!
Betrayal at Mystery Mansion is a Scooby-Doo take on Betrayal at the House on the Hill, which is, of course, a horror-themed game, whereas Betrayal at Mystery Mansion takes the basics of that game system but puts them in the Scooby-Doo universe with the look and the styling and the hijinks and the caper level. All of that's in Betrayal at Mystery Mansion. The things that I really love about this game is that it's quicker. It's streamlined, and that's perfect for families with kids. About a year ago, my kids got super into kind of the revamped, newer Scooby-Doo cartoon. So when they saw this game, it was a really exciting thing. So they knew all the characters, and they got into the theme. That may have helped our play experiences for sure. But mechanically, it's super easy to get them to. They like the exploring and the following, trying to achieve the goals. And then if you've played Betrayal, when the haunt happens, funny how it works out. I always end up being the betrayer because of the way that the game works. You can kind of pick who gets to be the betrayer. And I think that's so great for families so that it can kind of balance out age issues and things like that. If the 8-year-old is accidentally becomes the betrayer, he doesn't have to play it out, right? I can take that role and play it out against the kids, and then they love teaming up against me, so bonus for them. We've had a lot of fun with this, and it really is a family betrayal game. So Betrayal at Mystery Mansion, my number 5.
This was 100% my number 11 on the list. It's so good. So good for kids. And yeah, for kids, for sure. Not adults.
Not
My
you,
number,
Tom.
my number 5 is. I'm just glad to see Scooby-Doo in lots of good games this year.
Right?
My number 5 is the Alpha, which is from the good folks at Bicycle, best known for making playing cards. The Alpha is both a worker placement game where you're placing wolves down, has some luck thrown in to see if the wolves can take down these animals or not, and then a bit of what's that called what's the dilemma
Prisoner's
called?
Dilemma.
Prisoner's Dilemma thrown in the mix. In which my kids always lie and assume I will always lie, even though I've never lied to them once in this game. So works so well and great component quality. Bicycle really came out the gate with a lot of nice, solid family games this year and party games. This is the one I've chosen to put on the list, the Alpha.
Yeah, the production on this is pretty solid.
Number 4.
Number 4 for me is The Crew, which, if you were listening last week, was my number 1 favorite, personally, of the year. But so as a family game, it comes with a little bit of a caveat that it can be a little more complex than something you'd want to play with very young kids. But when I think family games, I'm often thinking of those classic trick-taking card games that I would be playing with my parents and my aunts and uncles. And in that sense, The Crew is excellent for this because if you have a basis in trick-taking card games, The Crew is a great jumping off point because now you're cooperative and now you've got missions and now you've got all these extra parameters. And as a jump off from classic trick-taking games, it works so well. So as a family game, it's my number 4, The Crew.
I struggle with the same thing you did, Eric, I finally decided not to put it on this list, mostly because I'm finding that trick-taking games are no longer simple to teach people. And so, yes, I've actually played this with my in-laws, and they got it, although it took me the longest time to explain to them. It's cooperative. They're so cutthroat. They're like, who won? I'm like, we all won.
That is tricky. Yeah. You have to sort of get them not to win sometimes. You don't necessarily want to win this trick. I need to win this trick.
All right, my number 4 is Monstrosity. And I'm going to spell that for you. It's MONSDRAWSITY. It is a game I like in spite of the punny name, in which you have a deck of cards with different monsters on them, and everybody gets their dry erase board and pen. And what happens is you get a witness, and the witness looks at a card secretly. It has 20 seconds to look at that card, and then puts it down. And then they describe that monster in as much detail as they can to the players. And then the players have 2 minutes to draw that monster as close to hopefully what the real image was as possible. You flip over the monster card, there's some voting and point allocation, which actually works quite well. Sometimes these kind of group games or party games, the scoring doesn't make a lot of sense. I like the scoring system in Monstrosity, but really, it's just a lot of fun to describe these monsters and to have the pressure of drawing them and to have that reveal when the real monster card is flipped over and then you're comparing all the drawings to them. It's a little, you just got to be a little gentle on some of it when you've got an 8-year-old describing the monster card. But it doesn't, ultimately in many ways, it doesn't matter because you're just having a lot of fun playing it. And hey, what really matters, you know what I'm saying? So Monstrosity, a really fun party game, but a really, really fun family game. My number 4.
We just played this yesterday. Christmas Eve we played it. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of yelling about it was either the explainer's fault or the drawer's fault for not listening to the explanation. There was a lot of that being said. And I agreed with all those points since I won. So, yeah, good game. My number 4 is a really pretty game called Santa Monica. This is a simple game about building your own Santa Monica pier as opposed to everyone else's Santa Monica piers. I'm not actually sure what's going on there. I think maybe you each own your own section of the pier. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, a chunk.
You're building your own pier in front of you by drafting these cards, putting them in front of you, and then moving different little meeple dudes onto the different spots they want to go. The artwork is really charming. AEG, this is the second game of theirs on my list here. They know how to make really No, it's actually the third one because I had Calico too. They know how to. They're on the ball, AG, these days, especially with this weight of game. And this is one that unfortunately came out to market right when the coronavirus hit, so no one was caring about that at that point in time. So I feel like it did not get a lot of buzz, but it should have. It's a fun game, Santa Monica.
I mean, it didn't get a lot of buzz, except that it was my number one game of 2020. Other than that.
So that's a little buzz.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you and I both talked about it. I'm saying, though, I haven't heard many others talking about it, unfortunately.
It did hit at a poor time, and I'm hoping that when you talk about it and when I talk about it, people will take note and believe us and give it a try because it is a wonderful game.
I believe you. I'll give it a try.
Oh, stop it. This ain't an infomercial.
Wow. Tom is on you today, Eric.
Snarky.
As I should be with the egg stuff.
Fair. Good point. Good point. You deserve it, Eric. Give us your number 3.
Oh, man.
Number 3.
Tom and I actually sync up. I don't know if I want to, but we'll sync up with Tom for Marvel United. What I like about this game and why it works so well for families, it's a superhero game that doesn't get bogged down in too many wacky mechanics. It's a very simple system of matching symbols and teaming up in a very simple way. Like I can use the 2 symbols on the card you just played in addition to the ones that I have on my card, and we can all cascade and work together like that. And you can pick your favorite superheroes. There's more expansions on the horizon. I can't wait to play more Marvel United. That's why it's my number 3. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, actually, had this come out with all those expansions, it could have cracked my top 10, I think. As it is, even with just the base game, it's just a really solid game that works really well with families. And I know it's been getting some people are like, oh, it's so simple. Yes, that's okay, folks.
Yeah.
Not everything
That's
has
what
to
it's
be
supposed to be.
Gloomhaven. And I just really like it. And it's fun, and I don't know. I played so many complex superhero games that one that's simple like this just makes me happy. Yeah.
I couldn't back the Kickstarter, and I really wish I could have, and I'm regretting it because...
You didn't need to. You could order it from Walmart.
Well, I am really envious that you guys played it, and you liking it so much is just... I guess maybe I need to go to Walmart. And my number 3 is actually higher up on at least one other list. I'll let you all piece it together.
She did a pun.
That's not a pun. That's wordplay. That's different.
It's kind of a pun.
Shut up, Eric.
Number 2.
Number 2 for me showed up on my top 10. That is Nova Luna. Lovely game of sort of chaining tiles together, drafting ones that are going to be worth it to you, tile laying and time management and all sorts of cool mechanisms, but they're presented in a way that I think is easy to grasp and is something that I could teach my mom without too much trouble. Nova Luna, my number 2.
It's such a good game. Oh, that Uva. My number 2, Dungeon Drop. This was a Kickstarter that ended up getting picked up, I think, by Game Right, which I was really happy for because I just really love this game. You've basically got a big old fistful of different cubes. There are some that represent gems and some that represent monsters and some that just represent pillars, because what's going to happen is you dump out all these cubes on the table and that forms your dungeon. And ultimately it's kind of set collection because you're going to, on your turn, just take all the cubes in a quote unquote, I'm making air quotes with my fingers, room, which is a little triangle formed by those pillar cubes. Take those cubes, you get some scoring cards, you have some race and class cards that you can mix and match that give you powers and abilities. But really, Dungeon Drop is light, it's quick, it's kinetic, it has energy. You can do some thoughtful stuff around using your ability and the powers and making choices of when you go for the pink gem that you need, but you know you're taking a monster and you'll take a point of damage. There's enough interest to make this a real game, but it's just joyful to play. I just love Dungeon Drop, and it is my number 2 game for families.
I like it. The reason I would not necessarily put on the list is Well, first of all, I think the Kickstarter version is so much nicer than the other version with the little faces on the cubes.
Fair enough. Okay.
So that if you can't get that one, and I don't know, I like it, but it's the slightest bit fiddly measuring stuff sometimes to see, like someone sits there and I'm like, just pick something. Here's an
Is
area.
that a
You
player
got it.
issue or a game issue, though? To me, we play it much more casually. I'm like, yeah, take it.
Fair enough. I guess, I don't know. It's interesting. I do like it, though. Also, I did it first, and I still haven't got royalties from the dungeon drop. The component thing, I believe I have that. All right, my number 2 is also on Eric's list. I won't make a pun. I'm just straightforward telling you. It's Eric's number 1.
You did rhyme, though.
And finally, number 1.
All right, it's my number 1, Project L. Which made my list last week, and it works so well for families. It has a nice, clean presentation, colorful pieces, tactile pieces. It just feels so good to place these puzzle pieces into your little rack and complete the puzzles, earn more puzzle pieces. It just succeeds in so many ways with so many ages. Project L, my number 1 family game of the year.
Excellent choice. Project L was my number 3. And if you're defining family games as games that you can play with kids, I think one element you can't underestimate that another game that I just mentioned, Dungeon Drop, has is a tactile element, a physical element, something that feels good to touch, because kids are very tactile creatures. And boy, Project L has that in spades. And so, Eric, I was glad to see it as your number 1.
It is fantastic. My number 2. Really like it. It just works so well. I have to say, I think if it didn't have the nice components it would still be a good game. But those components elevate it to something beyond that. It's the only 3-way crossover we have, so woohoo.
Woohoo.
And my number 1 was lower on Eric's list, and that's Abandon All Artichokes. You heard Eric talk about it just earlier in this very episode, so I won't rehash it much. But what I will say is the idea of streamlining the concept of deck building is wonderful, and really hyper-focusing it on the idea of thinning your deck or deck management. When you think about the building blocks of games, and I think Abandon All Artichokes does such a wonderful job. Yes, there's some randomness in it in terms of, do you just happen to keep on drawing the 2 artichokes you have left in your deck? But again, I'm defining family games as games that I can play with my kids. You would be surprised at what kids can enjoy in terms of dealing with some luck, dealing with some randomness, dealing with some take that. And Abandon All Artichokes, between the look of it, the simplicity of the rules, and just the fun, it's been a huge hit, and it is my number 1 family game of 2020.
Yeah, I noticed you were very quiet when I was talking about it earlier, and you were just saving it, so it would be a nice surprise. So well done.
Oh, thank you.
I like it also. Didn't make my top 10, but it went over well with my family. Although it is a little bit tricky to teach kids who know how to play deck builders the opposite.
True.
Also, I was like, when we're done, we're going to eat all these vegetables. No, it doesn't work? Okay. My number 1 is Back to the Future, Back in Time. Back to the Future, which is, well, another great, this is the second great movie here that I have in my thing here. I love Back to the Future. It's a great trilogy of movies. I like all 3 of them equally. But Back in Time is based on only the first movie. So there are actually 2 Back to the Future games came out this year. One was Dice Through Time. That one was okay. And I hate that I don't like to mention that like on a list like this, but I have to because the covers look similar. Mm-hmm. They use the same font, Back to the Future font. It's easy to get them confused. They came out the same year. That happens sometimes in the industry. But I like 2020 because it doesn't deal with the pesky time travel stuff, which is hard to do in a game. It just deals with make George and Lorraine fall in love. It's a cooperative game. You're working together to do so. It's made from the same team who made Horrified, and you can tell. It's this year's Horrified to me in that sense.
Oh, wow.
I like it a lot. The art is fantastic. There's certainly luck, and you get to punch Biff a lot. And I can't
You get to
say
punch
I
Biff
hate
in the
that.
other one, too.
That's true. I punched Biff a lot this year. Yeah. And again, I feel really bad about comparing the two of them because it feels like it's unfair, but it's not unfair. It's something people are going to want to know about. You know, but Back to the Future, Back in Time is the one that I really enjoyed. Those are our choices here, folks. We don't have a People's Choice this episode, unless future Eric can come in and fix that later on, because unfortunately online it just said Best Family Games, to the point where it actually fooled me. And Eric fixed me on that one. So...
Oh, hey, future Eric here to fix that, I guess. We put the poll back on the website with the correct title, so Best Family Games of 2020, and these are the results. In number 10, The Isle of Cats. Number 9, Trekking the World. Number 8, Truffle Shuffle, which made both Tom's and Suzanne's lists. Number 7, Hues and Cues. Number 6, Mariposas. I haven't played that one. I really want to. Number 5, Back to the Future, Back in Time. Tom's number 1. Number 4, Sonora. Number 3, My City. Number 2 was The Crew. That rhymes. And number 1, Calico. Back to past Tom, Suzanne, and Eric.
Well, that's that. But there's a lot of great games out there, folks. It's, don't let anyone tell you board gaming is dead. So many games out there. There's tons of party games that both Susan and Eric mentioned that I haven't played with my family yet and probably would like to, but I just don't have enough time. And that's a cool thing that we have so many good games to play with families.
Are people coming up and telling you that board gaming is dead? I haven't heard that.
No, but every year it drives me nuts. I see people go, this was not a very good year. Like, well, then you just didn't play a lot of games. Because, I can't remember the last time I thought a year was bad for games. If you played 10 good games over the course of a year, that's a good year.
Yeah.
And I played a couple hundred. It's a good year. Anyway, it's a good year for games. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
Well, I think we tend to, I like to look on the bright side if possible. So anyhow, that's it. We'll be back. Well, the next time you'll hear from us, it will be 2021. Our Kickstarter will be launching soon. We'll have some exact dates on that soon. I'm still working on that information. It will likely be mid-January. We'll post it everywhere, and we'll mention it on the podcast as soon as I know. But thank you all. I hope you had a fantastic time listening to this. And if you didn't, then you can always come back and listen to the next episode where it will hopefully be better because there will be fewer egg jokes.
Phew.
You're blaming it on the egg jokes? Sure.
Until next, you start it with pigs and end it with eggs. Alrighty, that's not how biology works, Eric. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vessel.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to the excellent podcast, The Dice Tower.
Oh my gosh!
He just had to crack that one.
No! Stop!
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 690, was recorded on December 26th, 2020. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Tom and I wax wondrously over our top 10 games starting with W. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Roy Cannaday, Mike Delisio, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. That Time Mr. Jackman, Mr. Downs, and Mr. Grant had a billiards tournament is brought to you by Hues and Cues. And you can get the latest on everything Dice Tower at Dicetower.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Tom@Dicetower.com, Suzanne at Dicetower.com, or Eric at Dicetower.com, or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including All the Bits, Men on Board, Cardboard and Wine, Sporadically Board, Board Game Design Lab, Tabletop Game Talk, The Family Gamers, The Portal Gaming Podcast, This Game is Broken, and Board Game Breakfast at Dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. I don't know if we can beat the puns from the the end of the show. I have nothing for the post credits.
Whisk 'em. All right, let's go. Let's go.
At the whisk of being more punny.
I'll see myself out.
Oh my goodness. I gotta get off this call.